Welsh. I came to the island with Jan 18 months ago from Palmerston North. We had 40 good years in Palmerston North. For half of that time I taught horticulture at Massey University. Then I bought a nursery, a plant nursery, where we grew natives and different perennial plants, and also I had a big organic veggie garden. So I thought I'd better share some of that knowledge on how to raise seedlings with the folks at Kai Gardens, which is located at the Waiheke Resources Trust. It's spring and the daffodils are coming out. It's time to sow seed. There's a lot of things you can sow directly in the soil now. The soil temperature is warming up. It's about 10 degrees in the soil, between 10 and 12. So you can sow carrots, you can sow beetroot, you can sow peas. But really for things like lettuce, members of the cabbage family, silver beet, celery, you're better off to start those in small trays and then grow them on in punnets and plant those out in October when it's good and warm and the days are long and growth is really quick. So we start things out usually in a greenhouse, prick them out into a bigger punnet, and then we move them outside. So what I'm going to show you is how to germinate seed. Seed comes in a range of sizes. This is quite a big seed. Beetroot. This is kale. A little bit smaller. A seed has three components. Of course, the magic of a seed is the embryo, which gives us new life. And then it has a food storage area, and that comes out as what we call a cotyledon leaf. But to protect that all, it's got a seed coat. To break that dormancy of the seed, to get germination to occur, usually you only need water. But we don't grow seed in pure water. We also need another vital component. We need air. Then we need something to support the seed as it comes up. We need the temperature to be optimum for the seed to germinate. And we need to give ourselves a potting mix that gives us water, air, a way of support, some nutrient in the way of some organic slow-release fertilizer, but also we need it to be weed and pest-free. So usually we get something like a composted bark mixed with some pumice sand, which is going to help with aeration and drainage. And we add some dolomite lime to that, and I've got a nice NPK fertilizer that's organic that I put in with that. So we're going to sow that in a nice punnet. A friend of mine was chucking these out, so I said don't throw those out, I'll reuse them. So what we want to do is put a layer of this bark and pumice potting mix in, but when we buy that, it's got some nice chunky bits in it, which in a hot situation is good for giving us aeration, but that's going to be a little bit of a big chunk to lift a small seedling out, so we want to sieve it. And I've just got this coarse sieve. And by the way, these big pieces, which we don't want in our seedling mix, are ideal for a mulch. So I'll just put those over here, and I'll go mulch something with those later. Now what we want here is a good level surface, because the amount of covering we put over a seed usually determines how long it takes to germinate, and we want the covering to be very even. So we'll just make this as level as possible, about 1 centimeter down from the top, just moving it with our fingers back and forth. And got a lovely float custom made for this tray, and we'll just use the weight of that float just to firm that down, and we get a nice level surface. Now with a relatively small seed, some of them are going to fall down into pits and cavities in there, so we go to a finer sieve and we just want to seal the top surface of that off. So we'll just sieve. This is a kitchen sieve, and I just got my drill out and I made the holes a little bit bigger. And so that now gives me a nice flat surface to sow onto. And first off, we're going to sow kale seed. This is from King Seed, kale, and it's a variety called Squire. And there's the botanical name, Brassica oleracea. I estimate there's about 300 seeds in here, and we're going to sow about half of this packet. Just going to let the seed come down gradually, and we're going to zigzag it across the tray. It's better to start light because we can always add more seed, but it's hard to remove seed. Now, by the time these germinate, we don't want them to be too crowded. And from my experience, a tray like this would hold about 150 seeds. Has anybody been counting? No. Well, here's a quick way when you're just learning how to do this. Make a little square, and I can fit that square in 12 times. So I want to get about 15 to 20 seeds in that little square, and that's just one way you can do it. That looks pretty good. I just see a few gaps here, so I'm just going to get a few seeds in my fingers, and that'll be good. Now, these are going to be in here for about 10 days at this time of year, and we're going to put them in a nice closed environment where it's going to be as warm as possible and nice and humid, and then we're going to put it into a different container. So just like I did before with that sealing layer, we're going to put some more mix in, and I'm going to cover the seed until I can no longer see it, and that's going to make it slightly dark. A little bit of light will get in, but it's also going to keep it moist. And we've just sown kale squire. I've got a lot of bamboo around the place, so we dry it out and we split it up, and that makes a nice little label for us. You can also use popsicle labels if you want. And I've just got kale squire and the date that I've sown it. And we're going to take that away and put that into our greenhouse. After we water it, we'll give it a nice fine watering. And I just want to show you, I've pre-done this tray. Sometimes we get seed that's very large. This is perpetual spinach. And they're nice big seeds. Now, because of the size of those seeds, it's going to take quite a bit of covering. You want to cover things with about its depth, the same depth of the seed, but we're not going to measure that. So we just push the seed down in, and the same thing, we cover it until we can no longer see the seed. Make sure no seed stuck onto there. So that just firms them down. Of course, there's many different ways to do seed sowing and different materials you can use. Basically, you use what works and what's easily available. And I'll just show you a couple of variations on the theme here. If you don't want to sow as many seeds, here's a little punnet that the seedlings from Bunnings come in, and it makes it ideal for sowing just about 30 or 40 seeds at a time. Just run that through the sieve. So we just got a smaller float this time, just to compact it down, and I'm going to use a slightly different covering mix. This is pumice sand. From the Waikato to the Taupo, we get big deposits of pumice, which blew out from one of the eruptions. And I'm just going to seal it with that. This is particularly nice if you got a black seed, which disappears when you put it on the mix. Onion seeds are black. And in this case, I'm going to sow some kohlrabi, one of my favorite vegetables. I call it an above ground turnip. This is from a different seed company, McGregor's, and one of the things about seed is they always like to have it airtight in a container, so we get this little aluminium container. And I don't want 150 of these at all at one time, so I'm just using a smaller punnet. And just another way of doing it, you can cover it now with the pumice. If you're going to sow these directly outside when the weather's warmer, that's better when it rains because it doesn't tend to wash away like the potting mix will. So just another covering. And some of the commercial people use something called vermiculite. Now we'll take these into our greenhouse over here and we'll germinate those. It'll take, for all of these varieties that I've sowed, about 12 days. Now sometimes we get a very large seed, and I'm thinking of pumpkins and watermelon, zucchini, and in this case, coriander, which is quite a big seed, and we can direct seed it into the punnets. Now these are the punnets we'll use to prick our seedlings out into, but in this case, I'm just going to put a pinch, which means 3 or 4 seeds, in each of these 6 cells of coriander. Coriander is one of those plants that you always need in the kitchen, but it keeps going to seed, so I recommend people sow it every 3 weeks. Press that down, and we'll just put some covering over that. And those will germinate directly into the cell, and we'll transplant into the garden from there. And that's a coriander picante. There's a few ways to sow seeds in a small container.